chapter 31, verse 10 is where we got up to. Yeah, chapter 31, verse 10. So, Moshe commanded them, saying, Mikate Shava Shanim b'moed Shnat HaShmitah b'Chag HaSukkot. This is the 612th commandment. Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of the 7th year, in the holiday of the sabbatical year, and the festival of Sukkot. Rashi says, B'shana Rishona Shel Shmitah, in the first year of the sabbatical year, Shana Shminis. So this is the 8th year. The end of you have the 7 years and you start the next year. V'lama korel sashnat hashmitah. So why does the Bible call it this sabbatical year? Shadayin shvius no hagis. Well, even though the sabbatical year has ended, you still have to obey the laws of the sabbatical year. B'katzir shel shvius, regarding the harvest, hayotze lemotze shvius, that goes out to the following 7th year. Meaning to say, if something was planted in the 7th year, you still can't harvest it. So if the Gemara Rosh Hashanah tells us on 12b, if grain attains a third of its growth during the 7th year, or if fruit trees bud during that year, the laws of the 7th year apply to them, even though it's only being harvested in the 8th year. So you can't sell and do business with those is it produce or produce? Produce. I always thought it was produce. Okay, so that's why it says, when are you doing this? You're doing this in the 8th year. Bevo kol Yisrael le'ra'ot es pnei Hashem Elokecha. The whole of Israel has to come and see Hashem your God. B'makom asher yivchar, in the place that He will choose, i.e., you're going to do that in the temple. Tikras haTorah zos neged kol Yisrael ba'aznehem. You have to read this Torah in front of all of Israel with their ears. Tikras haTorah zos. You shall read this Torah. Rashi says, "Hamelech hayakorei mitchilas elo advarim k'deisa b'mesachas suta al bima shel eitz shayu osim ba'azara." So the king would read from the beginning of Deuteronomy, all of Deuteronomy, as it states in the passage in the Talmud and Sota, on a platform of wood that they would make in the courtyard of the temple. And in fact, they do this today. They have this during the year after the sabbatical year, and Chol Moed, usually it's either the president of Israel or the chief rabbi of Israel, gathers and people go there and he reads.
Kotel, not on the Temple Mount.
What'd you say, Rabbi Yosef?
At the Kotel, not on the Temple Mount.
Yeah, he does it at the Kotel, not on the Temple Mount. Yeah, of course. They don't do anything officially on the Temple Mount. Right. No, they don't have any official functions on the Temple Mount, but this is the dignitaries of the government. All right, so you should read this whole Torah. And who reads it? Hakel ta'am, hanashim vataf. Gather the people, the men, the women, and the children. V'gercha asher b'sharecha, and your converts in your midst. V'man yishme'u v'man yamadu, so that they will hear and that they will learn. V'yaru et Hashem Elokechem, and they will fear Hashem your God. V'shamru asot et kol divrei Torah azot, and they will guard to do this whole Torah. So you have to bring the men, the women, and the children. And the Gemara in Sukkah, in Chagiga says the following, and Rashi quotes it. Ha'anashim, why are you bringing the men? Lilmod, the men are coming to study. Why are you dealing with the women? Why are the women coming? Because the women weren't obligated to study. Ha'anashim lishmoa, the women are coming to hear. So the women are coming to hear. V'ataf, why are they coming? Lamabo, they're giving reward to those who bring them. So these are young children are coming. They come to learn from the experience of the gathering. They're too young to learn from the experience, so they come to give reward to those who bring them. So why do young children go to synagogues? They give their parents reward for bringing them. Yes, Jerry, you had a question. I see your hand is raised.
Yes. In the modern day observance of Yovel, how many hours does it take for the leader to read all 5 books of Moses? How many hours?
Hold on one second. So one second. So first of all, this is the mitzvah of Hakel, which is different from the Yovel. Yovel is the Jubilee year. Hakel means to gather. So they would all gather together. But this is not the actual mitzvah. because we can't really perform the mitzvah today. We don't have the temple. So this is just like a symbolic mitzvah. And so they just read a couple of passages today. It's just symbolic of it. They're not really doing the whole thing.
The footnote 3 says from Sotan, they just read a few selected passages.
Well, that's back in the time of the Talmud.
Of course.
But
So even back then,
what?
Said they didn't read the entire book. He read selected passages.
Yeah.
That's footnote 3.
Yeah. So even back then they didn't read the whole thing. They would just read a little bit, but now they read even less. Now they read even less. Yeah. Now they read even less. Okay. So now what does the verse says? It says in verse 13, Uveneyam asher lo yadu yishmeu v'lamdu yirat Hashem Elokechem, and your children that do not know, they will hear and they will study to fear Hashem your God all the days that you live on the earth. Asher atem ovrim et yarden shemo urishta. And your children that don't know will hear and will study to fear Hashem your God all the days that you live, that you're alive. Once you cross over the Jordan, there you'll inherit it. So why is the mitzvah of Hakel? It's to remind everybody. You would think they would need this more than once every 7 years. Why don't they do it every year? But every 7 years they have to have a public gathering, a public reading of it. Okay, so verse 14. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. By the way, we're not yet up to mitzvah 613. That was mitzvah 612. Mitzvah 613, you know what that is?
Yeah,
To write a Torah scroll. So if you look on, again, I saw the Baal HaTurim. No, I didn't see this in the Baal HaTurim. I saw this elsewhere today. I said this in the parasha class. All the medieval rabbis, they wrote Torahs. Maimonides wrote 2 Torahs. Maimonides wrote 2 Torahs. The Rokeach said he wrote 40. The Meiri said he wrote a Torah scroll. They all used to write Torah scrolls. They used to write their own because this was a mitzvah. Okay, and it's in this week's parasha. God says to Moshe, "Hein karvu yamech hamut. You're about to die. Cross Yoshua, call Joshua, v'siatzvu ba'ol moed, and gather in the Ol Moed v'atzaveno, and I will command him, Vayelekh Moshe v'Yoshua v'yityatzvu ba'ol moed." And Moses went with Joshua, and they stood in the Ol Moed. Rashi says, v'atzaveno, I'm going to command him. Doesn't mean I'm going to command him, because he's already been commanded. Rashi says, v'azarzenu, I'm going to encourage him. We find no command to Joshua in these verses, just encouraging. Vayera,
God encouragement.
Vayera Hashem ba'ol moed ba'amud anan, and God appeared to Vayera Hashem. God appeared in the Ol Moed in the pillar of the cloud. Vayamod amud anan, and he stood in the pillar of cloud al Pesach Oel, by the entrance of the tent. Vayomer Hashem Moshe, and God said to Moshe, Hincha shokevim avusecha, behold, you are dwelling with your fathers. V'kama amazeh, and this people have, God says to Moshe, behold, you will dwell with your fathers. And then this people will rise up, they'll go after foreign gods, that will come into his midst, and I will abandon, and they will abandon me. They'll reject my covenant, asher karati ito, which I made with him. She says, what does that mean? Goyei Aretz, the peoples of the land. Now there's a very powerful verse. No, not yet. V'chara pi bo bayomahu. And oh, Jerry, yes. Jerry, yes.
Mankind does not know when he's going to die. Is Moshe the only person in the world that was told exactly what day he's going to die?
It's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer. To say he's the only one ever, the Torah doesn't say Moshe is the only one that ever was told he was going to die. I think that it's
Aaron,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Yes, Judah. A lot
How
of
about
people,
all
if they
those?
go to
How about all
Judah,
those? How about all those people who were told they're going to die by Besdin? They knew when. They said,
that's
tomorrow we're going to
executed.
kill you.
Oh, what
So,
about all those
same thing.
people? What about all those people who go to Dr. Shore and say, "Help
Right.
me"?
Get away. No, they'll kill them. Don't do that.
You guys think I'm joking. You guys think I'm joking, but I'm not. I'm saying Dr. Shore is a big tzaddik, and he
Okay.
helps people in their moments of tremendous pain. You have
But
no idea.
seriously, the people in the 38 years in the desert knew when they were going to die. And
No, they didn't know when they were going to die.
yeah,
They no.
Tisha B'Av.
They went into the graves the week of on Tisha B'Av, and some went out, and not everybody did. Every year, more and more people would die, but they didn't know who was going to die.
Okay,
And then
but
the
at least
last year,
so they knew
that's
the
why-
day, they didn't know the year.
Yeah, they knew the day, but they didn't know the year. And that's why we celebrate Tu B'Av, because the last year they thought that they were going to die still, and then they kept going to the graves for 7 nights, and they weren't sure which day was Tisha B'Av. And then they ended by Tu B'Av. They said, okay, they saw the moon, and they said it's clearly not Tisha B'Av anymore.
And just one more example, Aaron knew exactly when he was going
So
to die.
God told Aaron to go up the mountain, and he put him to death. And Moshe said, I want to die like Aaron. So that's a specific example. But I was even thinking, like, today, some people definitely have a premonition that they're going to die. Like the night before my grandfather died, he said he told us he dreamt that that there's a ladder going up to heaven, and angels are going up the ladder. And he didn't say anybody coming down. Like, people have premonitions that when they're going to die. People have premonitions, but not everybody does, clearly. I mean, in all seriousness, Judah, people must have told you that they're going to die. They must have told you that they're going to die today or something. That ever happened to you, Judah? And I've seen Judah deal with people.
No, I know that.
What'd you say, Judah? I lost you. Okay. So v'chara people bayomahu, and I will be angry on that day, v'azavtim, and I'll abandon them. V'starti, and that day, what will happen is, starti, panai mehem, I'll hide my face from them, v'yel achol, and they'll become prey. Umitzau ra'oz rabot v'tzarot, and many terrible things will find him. V'amar bayomahu, and he will say on that day, "Hello, al ki'ein el kai b'kirbi, mitzauni aros eila." And they'll say, "Oh, because there is no God in my midst. That's why these terrible things have found me." And verse 18, but Rashi says, verse 17, "V'starti panai," and I will conceal my face, k'moshe ini ro'eh b'tzorasam, as if I do not see their distress. Rashi says, that's what Rashi says. Now the next pasuk, it says, "V'anochi aster astir panai bayomahu," and I will hide my face on that day. I'll call ra'ah asher asah, because of all the evil that is done. Ki panah Elohim achrim, because he turned to foreign gods. This is the concept of hastaras panim, that God hides his face. That God, yeah, we want to say something, Seth?
No, I'm
Yeah.
listening. I can say something. It's fine.
Oh, what were you going to say,
I
Seth?
know he hides his face.
Yeah,
Say
yeah.
what you wanted to say.
Oh no, I was going to say that there is. I thought you were going to refer to this. Is a very popular song nowadays that people sing, a Hasidic song that says that they quote this verse, "Ki bayom hahu," on that day, "Haster astir panai bayom hahu." On that day, I'll hide my face. That's what God says. And like the understanding is that some people explain the Holocaust, that God hid his face from the world and allowed the evil things to happen. But the famous Hasidic song says, "Afilu ba'astara shebetoch hastara," even when God hides his face, within the hidden face, even when God is hidden, within hidden, Nimtza Hashem Yisbarach, God is still there. Even though God's hiding and he's secret, covered up, God is still there. So sometimes God's just a little bit harder to find, but God is always accessible.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I thought Hester was related to Purim, like in that.
Oh,
That-
for sure.
That's the where I hear about it the most, because it's hidden, within the story. But Steinsaltz says it's similar in that, it's not Hashem leaving us. He's not actually leaving us. He's just hiding. He's not fully getting, leaving, supporting the Jews. But what Rashi doesn't really comment on why Hashem is telling this to Moshe now. Is it really to stick it to him, to say, hey, even after all of this, this is what's going to happen, or is this just what's going to happen, and it's not your fault? But I don't know if that's examined at all in any way.
Well,
like
I
why
think
this is the very last thing to stick it to Moshe.
I think it's because the people, hey, Reb David. So I think it's because the people are very afraid. They're very afraid that bad times are coming with Moshe Rabbeinu missing. And Hashem is saying, there will be hard times, but I'm going to tell you what you could do to get you through these bad times. And you know what you could do to get through these bad times? You're going to write this song and keep it and memorize this song. And this song will be with you in all the most difficult times. And that will be, if you Rabbi David Weiss Olivni has a book called, I forgot what the name of this book is, talking about his time in Auschwitz. And it's a very powerful memoir, very, very powerful, very powerful. And he talks about how when they were in Auschwitz, the most prized possession they had was a single page of the Talmud. And they would pass around that page, and that was what gave them life. Because that's what the Torah is going to say. So the people are worried, what's going to happen to us without Moshe? And Hashem is saying, you still have the Torah. But I was going to say something else. You brought up Esther. The Baal HaTurim here again notes, I don't have the Baal HaTurim on me, I have to go get it over there, which is around 6 feet. So I'd have to walk 6 feet. Baal HaTurim says that the gematria of several of these words in this Torah, in this thing, is Haman. And when God hides his face, he makes space for Haman, and that's what it refers to. Hester is Esther. Let me get that for you so that you don't sit here like just wait one second. Nobody on the Zoom, wait. Nobody on the once in a while, you get a Baal HaTurim. That's a Baal HaTurim of inspiration. The tremendous story about the Baal HaTurim is that he wrote it all in one night. Do you know that? Did you ever hear that? So here's what the Baal HaTurim says. The Baal HaTurim says, oh, wait, where is it? Okay, here it says, Vistarti panai mehem, in verse 17. I will hide my face from them. Baal HaTurim says, Sofe Tevios, if you take the last letters of the phrase, Histarti panai mehem v'ayahu afol, and he's figuring this out without a computer. He says, if you take the last letter, Yud, Mem, Hey, and Lamed, that spells Haman. So he says, and that's what they said in the Tractate Chulin, Vanochi Esther Astir, that's a hint to Esther. So Seth, you quoted the Gemara in Chulin. Maybe you thought of it independently, or maybe you remembered it somehow deep in the recesses of your mind. But this is the allusion in the Torah to Haman and Esther. And so Haman was there, and Esther was hidden. That's what the Baal HaTurim says. Very, very. I don't know how he figures everything out, because the Baal HaTurim has more midrashim that we don't have a source for than any other commentary I've ever read. Okay, so then he says here, he says, now write for yourselves this song, and teach it to the children of Israel. Sima b'fiem, place it in their mouths. And this song will be for me a witness against the children of Israel. So what's the question, David? No. So what is this song? Rashi says this refers to Hazinu Hashemayim. You have to write the song of writing Hazinu Hashemayim until he will appease his land and his people. But the commentaries say that this is a reference to writing the Torah. That you have to, this is the commandment, the 613th commandment, the last mitzvah, to write the Torah. So the Rambam says, even if Rashi's right, so that this is just a commandment to write Parashas Hazinu, but you're not allowed to write just one portion of the Torah. That's against the Torah. So therefore, you have to write the whole Torah. And so therefore, that's why we have to write the entire Torah. So I'm biased about this mitzvah. It's one of my favorites. Guilty as charged. But that's one of the most powerful mitzvot.
We're allowed to write the mezuzah and tefillin.
What'd you say?
We're allowed to write the mezuzah and tefillin.
Yeah, that's not that we're commanded to. It's not that we're allowed to. We're commanded to write the mezuzah and the tefillin. But
Okay.
it's a mitzvah to write a Torah. It's not necessarily a mitzvah to write tefillin and mezuzah, but it's a mitzvah to write a Torah. Some say it's a mitzvah to write mezuzah and tefillin. Some say it's not. But this is the mitzvah to write a Torah. And the Torah is called the song. Don't ever forget that. The Torah is called the song. Yes, people say, what's the Torah? The Torah is a song. Yeah. So another explanation from Moshe Feinstein says, Hazinu contains within it the whole Torah. The passage of Hazinu, the parasha of Hazinu, has all the essential principles of the Torah. That's the power that's contained within it.
Where does it say this is the whole Torah?
That's the commentaries say Hashira Azos refers to the whole Torah. Does Rabbi Steinfeld say it? The Talmud
I
says
don't
it.
see it in Rashi.
No, Rashi doesn't say it. Rashi says it. Okay, we'll stop the recording here and we'll have a mincha. All right.